London, 1940. Night after night, bombs rained down and whole neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. Families fled to shelters, children slept in makeshift hammocks underground, and when the morning came, the city rose to face the wreckage. These images capture those days, not from history books, but as they were lived in the middle of fire and ash. This photo was taken in London during the Blitz, showing the wreckage of a double-decker bus ripped open by a German bomb. The vehicle sits mangled in the middle of the street, its upper deck shredded, windows blown out, and debris scattered across the road. Behind it, shop fronts are gutted, their signs hanging loose while people pick their way through the destruction. During the Blitz, buses like this were often caught in air raids while running their normal routes. German bombers targeted not only factories and railways, but also major cities to break morale. High-explosive bombs could rip through vehicles and buildings in seconds, while incendiaries started massive fires. On some nights, over 300 tons of bombs were dropped across London. This photo shows a London bus that has been almost completely destroyed during the Blitz. Its windows are shattered, the roof torn open, and debris from surrounding buildings lies scattered across the street. Rescue workers are climbing on top of the wreck, searching for survivors or bodies while others sift through rubble nearby. Buses were frequent victims of the bombings. High-explosive bombs, like the ones dropped here, could easily tear through vehicles and collapse buildings onto them. Between 1940 and 1941, over 200 buses and trams in London were destroyed in raids. Can you imagine waiting for your morning bus to work, only to see streets like this instead? Vehicles blown apart and entire blocks reduced to rubble? This photo shows a London double-decker bus blown into the side of a building during the Blitz. The force of a German high-explosive bomb has hurled the bus upright, leaving it jammed against the damaged structure, with rubble and debris scattered across the street. Soldiers and rescue crews stand at the scene examining the wreck. Here you can see postmen working in the rubble after a bombing raid during the Blitz. They're collecting mail bags from the debris, making sure letters and parcels are salvaged, even though the entire street has been destroyed. The German Luftwaffe dropped over 30,000 tons of bombs on London between 1940 and 1941, yet services like the postal system kept running. Mail was often sorted in damaged buildings, and delivery continued almost daily. Here you can see London firefighters at work during the Blitz. They're riding in a fire engine while their colleagues battle flames from buildings hit during a German bombing raid. Hoses run across the street and the air is still thick with smoke. The Luftwaffe often used incendiary bombs along with high explosives. These small devices were designed to ignite massive fires, especially in crowded streets filled with shops and warehouses. On some nights, more than 100,000 incendiaries were dropped in a single raid. Keeping fires under control was a constant struggle. Entire brigades worked for hours, sometimes days, to stop flames from spreading through whole neighborhoods. Without them, central London could have burned to the ground. Here you can see a German Heinkel He-111 bomber flying over London during the Blitz. Below it is the River Thames with the East End docks clearly visible, one of the Luftwaffe's main targets because of their role in shipping and supplies. The Heinkel He-111 was one of Germany's most widely used bombers. It could carry up to 2,000 kilograms of bombs, enough to devastate entire blocks. London's docklands were especially hard hit. On September 7, 1940, the first day of the Blitz, hundreds of tons of explosives and incendiaries were dropped on this very area. From this angle, the photo shows exactly what German pilots saw as they lined up their bombing runs. Can you imagine looking down at a whole city like this, knowing it was about to be set on fire? Here you can see the ruins of central London after heavy bombing, with St. Paul's Cathedral still standing tall in the background. Much of the area around it has been reduced to rubble, with whole city blocks flattened and only the outlines of buildings left visible. St. Paul's was hit several times during the Blitz, but remarkably survived the raids thanks to firewatch teams who worked through the night to put out incendiary bombs on its roof. For many Londoners, its survival became a symbol that the city itself would endure. More than one-third of London was destroyed or damaged during the Blitz, and entire neighborhoods had to be rebuilt after the war. Here you can see Londoners sheltering inside the Aldwych Underground station during the Blitz. Families are spread out on the platforms and even between the rails, using blankets, newspapers, and whatever they could carry to make the place livable for the night. At the peak of the bombing, as many as 150,000 people slept in London's tube stations every evening. Some stayed only during raids, but others brought bedding, food, and even makeshift furniture to turn the stations into temporary homes. Air raid sirens could sound several times a night, and the underground tunnels were one of the safest places to be. Here you can see a London street after a bombing raid during the Blitz. Families have pulled what they could from their damaged homes. Beds, wardrobes, chairs, even children's cribs, now stacked along the pavement. Neighbors gather in small groups while rescue crews work in the background to clear rubble and assess the damage. Between 1940 and 1941, around 1.4 million Londoners were left homeless by German bombing. In many cases, people had only a few hours to recover belongings before their houses were demolished or collapsed further. Here you can see men clearing debris from a railway tunnel after a bombing raid during the Blitz. A bomb has blasted through the surface, leaving a gaping hole in the ceiling and filling the underground space with tons of rubble. Workers with shovels and pickaxes dig through the wreckage to reopen the line. Railways and underground tunnels were frequent targets because they were vital for moving supplies, troops, and civilians. German high-explosive bombs could penetrate deep into the ground, sometimes collapsing entire sections of track. Here you can see a Home Guard soldier standing guard over the wreckage of a German Junkers Ju-88 bomber that crashed near Kentish Town, North London, on September 8, 1940. The remains of the plane's wing and engine lie twisted and burned after being shot down during a raid. The Ju-88 was one of the Luftwaffe's main bombers during the Blitz, fast, versatile, and capable of carrying up to 3,000 kilograms of bombs. Many of them targeted London's docks, railways, and residential areas, but British defences, including the RAF's Spitfires and Hurricanes, along with anti-aircraft guns, regularly brought them down. Here you can see the aftermath of a German air raid in South London, September 1940. A direct hit has ripped through one of the apartment blocks, collapsing entire floors into a heap of rubble. People stand in the courtyard below, some searching for survivors, while others clear debris. This was during the opening weeks of the Blitz, when the Luftwaffe bombed London for 57 nights in a row. High-explosive bombs like the one that hit here could destroy entire buildings in seconds, and often left survivors trapped inside the wreckage. By the end of 1940, more than 13,000 Londoners had been killed and countless families made homeless. This photo shows nurses inside Park Hospital, Lewisham, later known as Hither Green Hospital, in September 1940 after a German bombing raid. The blast tore through the ward, shattering windows, bending metal bed frames, and scattering debris across the floor. Despite the destruction, the nurses stayed on duty, calmly clearing wreckage so the hospital could continue treating patients. During the Blitz, hospitals were frequent targets. Staff often worked through blackouts and bombardments, risking their lives to care for the wounded. This haunting photo captures 3 children sleeping in hammocks inside a London air raid shelter during the Blitz, October 1940. The concrete walls and dim light show how far from comfort these nights were. Yet, despite the bombers overhead, children still found moments of rest, cradled in makeshift hammocks, wrapped in blankets, safe underground while the city above burned. For many London families, tube stations and shelters became temporary homes. Entire communities slept on platforms, shared food, and tried to create some sense of normalcy. For the children, this became their bedtime reality, drifting to sleep in the middle of a war. This striking photo, taken on October 8, 1940, shows smoke circles drifting over Horse Guards Parade in London during the Blitz. What looks like abstract art in the sky is actually the deadly trace of a dogfight between RAF Spitfires and Hurricanes against German Luftwaffe bombers. Civilians below went about their lives under constant threat, while high above, battles raged daily for control of Britain's skies. London, 1940. The front of St. Thomas's Hospital has been torn open by a bomb strike, leaving the building half collapsed. Piles of rubble spill across the street while Big Ben rises in the background. A few people stand near the debris, surveying the damage in silence. London, early 1940s. A city street lies torn apart after a bombing raid. Buildings stand with shattered windows and gaping holes, while piles of rubble and debris spill across the pavement. A truck and a few pedestrians move cautiously through the wreckage, the scene marked by silence and ruin.